My ex-boyfriend invited me to his wedding just to flaunt his rich fiancée, but my plus one flipped the whole thing on its head in a way no one saw coming. Dylan, 30 and I, 22, first met while working part-time at Starbucks. I was still in college back then, saving up to finally move out of my parents' place, while he was trying to pay off student loans. His parents were deep in debt from gambling and couldn't help him out financially. At first, we bonded over our messy families, but it didn't take long before we just genuinely liked being around each other. 2 years later, after I graduated, I had enough saved up to get my own apartment. Dylan, on the other hand, was still stuck at his parents' house trying to stay on top of those loans. I offered to let him move in with me, but he couldn't afford half the rent. So I told him he could just cover 20%, and I'd take care of the rest. He agreed quickly. We split utilities evenly, though. Dylan's job was more physical. He had to be on site for long shifts, while I worked a corporate job with a more flexible schedule. My boss didn't care if I worked remotely as long as I hit my goals. Because Dylan worked longer hours, he rarely helped out at home. So I did all the cooking, laundry, dishes, and cleaning. I didn't mind at first. I knew he was tired. But the one thing I asked him to do was take out the trash since he always ate after me. And even that, he couldn't remember. There was one weekend I had to go into work, and when I came back, the place was disgusting. Dishes everywhere, food, wrappers tossed on the counters, trash overflowing, laundry stacked high. I was pissed. I'd worked all day and just wanted to chill, but seeing the apartment like that? No chance. I spent the whole evening cleaning up, hoping he'd at least notice or say thank you. When he got home, he hugged me and said he missed me, but didn't say a word about the house. He just plopped down and turned on his game like nothing had changed. That hit me. I was exhausted, still doing everything, and getting zero appreciation. I started crying. Maybe it was the stress, or the lack of sleep, or just feeling invisible. He looked over and asked if I was okay. I shook my head, said I was fine, and told him I was going to bed. Before I did, I reminded him again to take out the trash. He nodded. The next morning, trash still there. I lost it. He came downstairs and asked what was for breakfast, and I snapped. I told him to cook for himself. He said I was being rude. That's when I laid it all out. How he was useless around the house. How he never lifted a finger. He just blinked, like he had no clue what I was talking about, and told me not to be so dramatic. I asked why he never took out the trash. He said he just forgot. So I asked him what exactly he did do at home besides sit on the couch with a beer. He said he was always tired and deserved time to relax. I agreed. But what about me? I reminded him that I worked too. I came home and cooked, cleaned, did his laundry, even ironed his shirts. All I asked was for him to take out the trash. And then he hit me with it. I never asked you to do those things. He said as his girlfriend, I should help out. He even had the nerve to say his mom did the same for his dad. That was it. I told him straight. I wasn't his mother. I wasn't doing anything else for him. He'd have to cook his own meals, do his own laundry, iron his own shirts, take out his own trash. We were equals, and I wasn't his maid. He looked stunned. I raised my hand to stop him before he could argue. Then I told him one more thing. From now on, he had to pay 50% of the rent or move out. Dylan looked like I slapped him. Where is all this coming from? He asked. I told him I was just done working so hard without getting any appreciation. He wanted to say something, but I was late for work and walked out. That was the first time I had ever drawn a hard boundary in my life. And I didn't feel bad about it. I stuck to it. I cleaned only my own stuff, didn't lift a finger to help him anymore. He scrambled to find clean clothes, couldn't figure out how to iron a shirt, and still refused to clean the kitchen. I started ordering takeout, so I didn't have to use the kitchen at all. He tried getting me to go back to my old ways, saying I was being a bad partner. I didn't budge. When the rent was due, I sent my half to the landlord and told her Dylan would pay the rest. He came home yelling, saying I should pay 80% like before. I shut him down. I reminded him that he never thanked me or respected me when I was covering most of the rent. So why should I keep doing it? He made a fuss, but in the end, he paid his share. Still, he never once apologized. Not once did he say, "I'm sorry," or even admit I was right. It was sad. He just didn't care. Looking back, I wish I had seen who he really was sooner. Over the next few months, our fights got worse. He blamed me for everything, tried to guilt-trip me into going back to being his little housewife. Then, I got a promotion at work, and that broke him. One of our mutual friends, who also works with me, must have told him. That night was the worst fight we ever had. Dylan came home drunk and stormed into the room yelling that he needed to talk. The next night, he wouldn't stop pushing that he had something important to tell me. Still half asleep and annoyed, I sat up just to get it over with and asked what could possibly be so urgent it couldn't wait till morning. That's when Dylan, clearly drunk, began rambling about someone he met at work. I immediately knew who he meant. Her name was Bella. I'd seen her once at one of his office parties. She was young, maybe just 20, and the daughter of some big-shot businessman. It was obvious she came from money. The only reason she even worked was because her father thought she needed real-life experience. Dylan kept going on about how he was falling in love with her and how, according to him, she was a real woman, unlike me. I just sat there, emotionless. I didn't feel angry or sad like maybe I should have. Truth is, our relationship had been dead for months. We were more like roommates than a couple by then. He kept talking, probably thinking he was breaking my heart, but I cut him off. I told him I was genuinely happy for him and that maybe it was time we ended things. I said we could break up peacefully and he should start planning to move out. He stared at me like I'd slapped him and asked if I was jealous. I just smiled and said I wasn't. It actually made me feel relieved. Now I wouldn't feel guilty for finally breaking things off. That made him snap. His whole vibe shifted and he started yelling, asking if it was my recent promotion that had me acting all confident. I calmly told him the promotion had nothing to do with it. I had just grown enough to see we weren't good for each other. I reminded him how we barely spoke anymore, let alone acted like people in love. I said maybe that's why he felt the need to look elsewhere. I thought he'd appreciate my honesty, but instead, he went off about how modern women like me only care about their careers. He claimed Bella was better because all she wanted was a husband and kids. I didn't lose my temper. I simply told him that every woman wants different things. Bella didn't need to work because her family could support her, but I liked working. I enjoyed the independence it gave me. If he wanted someone like Bella, he should be with her. I told him again to move out soon and that I'd be just fine living here alone. He scoffed and asked how I could afford rent. I explained that my raise had covered everything. I didn't need anyone to split the cost anymore. Hearing that made him explode. He shouted that I was trying to show off, acting like I was something special. He barked about how Bella had more than me anyway. She had her own house thanks to her dad. He said I should be more submissive and stop trying to act like a man. I'd had enough. I told him to shut up. I wasn't about to keep arguing with him in the middle of the night. I said he had until the end of the month to pack up and that he'd be sleeping on the couch till then. He mumbled something under his breath, but I didn't bother listening. I went to sleep. Over the week, he started moving his stuff out, bit by bit. I couldn't help but feel excited knowing I'd soon have the place all to myself. But then came his last night. I came home from work to find Dylan and Bella both sitting on the couch. I blinked. He looked up and told me casually that since it was his final night, he wanted to show Bella where he used to live. I was floored. How could he bring another woman into the apartment we shared, knowing I'd be back that night? Still, I chose not to make a scene in front of Bella. She wasn't the one who disrespected me, so I gave her a polite hello. But to my surprise, she just glared at me and didn't even say a word in return. I brushed it off and went to wash up. Later, while I was in the kitchen making pasta for myself, Bella came in for some water. She just stood there, staring at me like I was some alien. I asked if she needed anything, but she just kept that same cold look on her face. I turned back to my food, trying to ignore her, and once I was done, I took my meal to the bedroom to eat in peace. After I ate and started to head back downstairs, I heard voices. Dylan and Bella were talking. What I heard next made my stomach drop. Bella said he was lucky to have upgraded from someone who looked like me. Then Dylan laughed and agreed. She asked him why he ever dated me, and what he said next broke something inside me. He told her that he'd used me, that I was gullible and paid for everything when we dated, that I helped him through college financially, that I even paid most of the rent for the past couple of years, which helped him save money. I felt sick. I always wondered if he appreciated what I'd done for him, but I didn't know he'd been using me from the start. They kept talking, like I was some joke, tearing apart our past and laughing about it. I wanted to scream, but instead, I quietly turned back and went upstairs. I cried silently into my pillow that night, not because I wanted him back, but because it hurt so bad to realize how little I ever meant to him. By morning, they were gone. Dylan had taken the last of his stuff and finally left. I walked around the apartment feeling this strange mix of heartbreak and relief. I was free, completely free. I started crying again, but this time out of joy. I danced through the place, finally able to breathe. I spent that whole day deep cleaning the apartment, making sure there was no trace of him left. Over the next few weeks, I fully embraced living alone. I didn't care anymore what Dylan and Bella had said. I let it go. Everything felt peaceful. Until 2 months later. That's when one of our mutual friends at work told me Dylan was getting married to Bella. I was stunned. It all seemed so fast. They showed me pictures from their engagement shoot. They looked really happy. I won't lie, I felt a sting. Not because I missed him, but because I had poured so much of myself into a man who only ever saw me as a stepping stone. But I reminded myself that I never would have been happy with him anyway. That night, when I got home and opened my mailbox, I found something I never expected, a wedding invitation from Dylan and Bella. My eyes widened. I actually thought it might have been a mistake, or maybe just some weird attempt at being polite. When I finally opened the invitation and saw what Dylan had scribbled in the corner, I froze. Inside the card, in his own handwriting, it read, "I want you to attend my wedding so you can see the grand life I'm going to have with Bella." That hit me like a slap. It became crystal clear that he didn't send this invite out of courtesy. He just wanted to show off. Show off his rich fiancée, his new lifestyle, and the fact that he'd leveled up. I stared at the words for a long minute, my hands tightening around the envelope. I couldn't understand how someone I had cared for and supported could turn around and act this cruel. All those years I paid his rent, cooked for him, cleaned up after him, he now wanted me to witness his so-called upgrade. But instead of letting it break me, something inside me snapped. I decided if he wanted me there so badly, then I'd be there, but on my terms. So I checked the RSVP box, yes, with a +1. And from that moment on, the idea started forming. I knew exactly what I was going to do. I pulled out my laptop and searched Bella's social media profiles. It didn't take long. She had a public page, and she posted like her life depended on it. As I scrolled through endless filtered selfies and designer outfits, I finally struck gold. Just 6 months ago, she had gone through a breakup with a guy named Jake. There were tons of old posts of them together that went back to their high school years. From the looks of it, they'd been a long-term couple. I sent Jake a friend request and waited. When he accepted, I messaged him directly. I didn't beat around the bush. I told him exactly who I was and laid out my plan to bring him as my date to Dylan and Bella's wedding. At first, he was understandably confused. But after I explained the whole story, he got it. Over the next few weeks, Jake and I messaged back and forth, and that's when he dropped a bombshell. Bella had cheated on him, multiple times. And her last affair? It was with Dylan. That was news to me. I hadn't realized Dylan had been the reason for their breakup. Jake said Bella had always gone after older guys, and that he wasn't shocked when she left him for Dylan. He even said Bella had asked to stay friends after they broke up, but he blocked her. Still, from the way he talked about her, I could tell he still had feelings. I opened up to him too. Told him about all the ways Dylan had used me. How he leeched off me for years and never said thank you. How he and Bella sat on my couch, laughed at me, mocked me like I was nothing. Jake was genuinely shocked by how cruel Dylan had been. After hearing everything, he agreed to be my +1. I was nervous, but also a little excited. I couldn't wait to see the look on their faces when I showed up with Jake. When the wedding day arrived, I wore my favorite black dress and walked into the venue beside Jake. The moment Dylan saw us, his face turned ghost white. He recognized Jake instantly. We acted like nothing was strange and found our seats. Dylan stormed over and hissed at me, asking why I had brought Bella's ex. I gave him a sweet smile and shrugged. What could he do? 'Cause as seen at his own wedding. He had to swallow his rage and walk back up the aisle, throwing daggers at me with his eyes. When the ceremony began, everyone stood up. Bella walked down the aisle looking picture perfect in her white gown, arm in arm with her father. The wedding itself went off without a hitch. Then it was time for the reception. Bella had changed into another dress, something sleeker and flashier. She entered, the room all smiles, until her eyes landed on Jake. She froze. Then she looked at me. Then back at Jake. Clearly thrown off, she walked straight over and asked him what he was doing with me. I smiled, told her that I'd invited him to show support for her big day. She didn't find it funny. She turned to Jake and snapped, asking if we were dating now. Jake didn't answer. He didn't need to. Her face turned red. He calmly asked if they could talk in private, and she agreed, but not before shooting me a deadly glare. The two of them walked off, and I turned just in. Time to catch Dylan watching us clearly. Rattled, but trying hard to keep it together. The party kept going, but time started slipping by. An hour passed, then another, and Bella still hadn't come back. People were beginning to whisper. Bella's father looked nervous. Eventually, he sent one of the bridesmaids to check. A few minutes later, the bridesmaid came running back, clutching a folded note. She read it aloud in front of everyone. Bella had left. She wrote that seeing Jake again made her realize she was still in love with him. She said marrying Dylan was a mistake and that she couldn't go through with it. There was a collective gasp from the guests. I stood there stunned. I had expected to get under Dylan's skin, but not this. The room went completely silent. Dylan looked like he might explode. His face was bright red, jaw clenched, fists shaking. He couldn't believe it. Bella's parents apologized over and over to the guests, begging them to forgive the chaos. People started to leave. Meanwhile, Dylan, who had once sent me a wedding invite just to flex, now stood humiliated and alone at his own reception. The same stage he built to show me what I missed out on had become the site of his public downfall. Today, Dylan showed up at my door, probably because he knew I'd be home over the weekend. At first, I refused to open it. I told him to go away, but he kept shouting that he wasn't leaving until he got to talk to me. I cracked the door open just enough to see him and said he wasn't welcome inside. If he had something to say, he could say it from the doorstep. Standing there on my front step, Dylan started yelling that I had destroyed his life. He claimed he'd already quit his job because he thought marrying someone like Bella meant he'd never have to work again. He barked at me, asking why I brought Jake to the wedding. I felt my patience snap. I looked him straight in the eye and told him I'd heard everything that night he was talking to Bella. His face changed instantly. I said I knew he had used me for years, for rent, for dinners, for everything. I told him I had done it out of love, not because I was stupid, and even when he cheated on me, I didn't expose him. I let it go. But inviting me to his wedding just to gloat about his rich fiancée? That was where I drew the line. I reminded him Bella made her own choices, and if he was mad, he should be mad at her, not me. He didn't take that well. He started yelling louder, blaming me for being too naive to realize I was being used, and said I shouldn't hold the past against him. I laughed at that. He really didn't get it. Then he started ranting about how Bella was supposed to be his big break, how he had worked so hard to charm her and win her over, but I ruined it. His words turned nasty fast, and I had enough. I told him to leave my property, or I'd call the police. He smirked and said I wouldn't dare. So I pulled out my phone and started dialing right in front of him. That changed his tone real quick. He backed off, muttering that I was overreacting, and said he was leaving. I slammed the door shut and made a promise to myself. I was never letting this man back into my life. After that, I blocked him everywhere and told my family about the incident. I also decided to change the locks on my doors and install a security camera just in case he ever tried coming back. That chapter of my life was over. It's been a month since all of that happened, and I've been caught up with work, so I didn't have time to respond to the hundreds of messages I've gotten asking the same thing. Did Jake and I ever meet again? The answer is yes. About a week ago, Jake invited me out to lunch. He said he wanted to talk. When I arrived, I saw Bella sitting next to him. I instinctively tensed, thinking maybe this was some kind of setup or confrontation. But instead, Bella smiled politely and greeted me. I wasn't sure what she was doing there, but Jake reassured me that she only came to apologize. Bella nodded and began sincerely apologizing for how she'd acted toward me in the past. She then opened up about her side of the story, how Dylan had been incredibly sweet to her at work and gave her tons of attention. Since they worked long hours together, they got close, and every time they talked, Dylan would complain about me. He told her he was miserable in our relationship and wished he had someone better looking, like her. Eventually, she said she gave in. One night, when she and Jake were going through a tough time, she made a mistake and slept with Dylan. After that, Dylan convinced her that Jake wasn't good enough and kept pressuring her, saying they belonged together and that he could, give her everything. She admitted she felt guilty for cheating, but she also thought maybe she'd be happier with Dylan, even though he was older. Then she told me something that really caught me off guard. When she saw me for the first time, she was insecure. Seeing how confident and independent I was made her feel like she didn't measure up. She said she envied the fact that I didn't need anyone to take care of me. I told her I understood, but I'd worked hard for everything I had. Bella nodded, clearly feeling ashamed. Then I asked her the one thing I'd been wondering. What exactly happened between her and Jake at the wedding? She said when she saw him walk in with me, it shocked her. She didn't expect it, and seeing his face brought up all those feelings she thought she had buried. She realized she never loved Dylan the way she loved Jake. When they talked privately, during the wedding, they both realized they still cared for each other. That's why she left. She wrote the note for her family, and they ran away together. Bella said they've been together ever since. She talked to her parents, and while they were furious at first, they eventually came around and agreed to support her decision. She also said she was planning to file for an annulment from Dylan soon. Hearing all that gave me mixed feelings. I won't lie. It still felt strange, but at least now I understood everything. And I could see how happy Jake and Bella looked. Together. We ate lunch, chatted a bit more, and then parted ways. Since that day, I haven't really kept in touch with them, and honestly, I don't plan to. I've had enough drama to last a lifetime. I'm back to focusing on my career and putting all my energy into myself. As for Dylan, I don't know what he's doing or what kind of mess he's made for himself. But I hope, for everyone's sake, he finally learns that love isn't something you manipulate for personal gain, and money won't ever fix what's broken inside.